Hello and welcome to our goal setting lunch and learn recap. We held a goal setting lunch and learn session last week and just now providing kind of an abbreviated version to give you some good tools and tips for setting goals in this upcoming year 2022. So we'll just go ahead and kind of get started here. First of all, just want to, kind of have us consider why we should set goals. Like, what's the purpose of goal setting and why is it maybe a good idea? For one, it's really an act of taking responsibility for ourselves and generating some forward momentum rather than looking back and looking in the past. It's a way for us to generate kind of some positive forward movement towards something that matters to us. And when we set goals, we tend to increase our feelings of having an intrinsic locus of control rather than an external locus of control. And we know that intrinsic locus of control, which is really feeling like we have ownership and power and control over our lives, is associated with a lot of really positive well-being outcomes. So the more we can kind of take control of our lives or feel in control of our lives, the happier we are likely to be. So that's one reason to just kind of maybe practice goal setting to really get yourself feeling like you are empowered. And it also is just a good way to increase your chances of success at meeting different overcoming obstacles or meeting different challenges. If you have a specific goal that you're working towards, you're going to be more likely to be successful. So goal setting is a pretty good idea to practice if you want to experience some positive behavior change in your life. So today I've just kind of compiled a couple of just really mini exercises or thought-provoking questions that can challenge you to think about how you could set a goal for yourself for the upcoming year 2022. So I want you just to maybe take a minute to reflect on kind of your hopes, your values, your dreams, what might feel like it's missing for you in your life, and think of maybe just one goal or something that you'd like to put energy towards changing or improving or growing within yourself over this next year. So once you have something in mind, I want us to consider if this something is, can we put it in a format that is a SMART goal? And probably if you're, this is a format that's used in all sorts of different industries, so you may be familiar with the SMART goal process. But even knowing about SMART goals and the importance of setting goals with this framework, a lot of times we know it, but we don't do it. And so this is kind of a way to really think about your year 2022 and what you hope to achieve and how you can kind of apply this to the SMART goal format. So first of all, just thinking one of the biggest mistake we make is having goals that are too general. And I do this all the time. And it's really easy to just think about kind of a vague change you want in your life and start to strive towards it. For example, I want to be healthier in 2022. Well, that's great, but you're likely not going to make a lot of progress moving towards that if you aren't a little bit more specific in how you're going to achieve that, what that's going to look like, and working towards those more specific goals. So you really want more tangible outcomes. You want more of a quantifiable goal, something that you can measure, something that has specific outcomes so you know if you've reached your goal or not. So instead of saying I'm going to be healthier in 2022, you might narrow that down to I'm going to eat healthier in 2022. And then you might really say that's actually not very specific and pretty vague. And really think about what eating healthy might look like for you. So thinking about where in your day do you tend to eat less healthy? Is it the snacks you choose? Is it the breakfast that you do or do not eat? And consider how you might take one aspect of that behavior and set a specific goal for it. So it could be your specific goal. Again, you want it to have outcomes, you want it to be tangible, you want it to be measurable. How could you maybe say, I'm going to eat salad 3 times a week for the next, make it time bound. You don't want it to be forever. I'm going to, eat salad for the next, for 3 days a week for the next 2 weeks. And the more specific you can get, the better. So thinking about, is your goal specific? Is it measurable? Is it attainable? Are you saying I'm going to eat salad for every meal? That's clearly not going to be attainable or healthy. So thinking about, is it attainable? And then also, and sometimes this is, I'm referring to it as relevant, the R in SMART goals. Sometimes it's realistic, but relevant is I think a good way to frame, is your goal something that's really truly important to you? Why are you choosing this goal? Are you being pressured by outside forces, social influences, what others think you need to be doing or should be doing? Or is this something that really aligns with your values? So you're going to be much more successful if it's something that actually is truly a passionate motivator for yourself. So kind of reflecting on that as well as you're making these goals. So again, looking, is my goal that I have in mind for myself for 2022, can I make it as specific as possible? Measurable? Is it attainable? Do I need to maybe lessen my my plan, maybe make it a little bit more likely that I can achieve it? Relevant, and then time bound. And this is, you want to make sure your goal, you're not setting your goal in stone. And I think that's one reason people don't enjoy the SMART goal process. They feel like they have to, lock themselves into a certain process or a certain specific goal. And that's really not the case at all. That's why having it be time bound, where I'm going to do this for the next 2 weeks, is something that's really helpful, because you can go back and in 2 weeks reevaluate and try to decide if you maybe want to make some changes to your plan, or you maybe want to switch it up and focus on a different aspect of the area that you're focusing on or hope to work on. So goals are always changing. They're dynamic. They're not set in stone. So make sure you're able to be flexible with them. And so after you've kind of established a SMART goal for yourself, a really good question to ask is, how ready are you to start making some of those changes? How ready are you to make shifts in your behavior? And so you can see on the screen right now is the how ready ruler. And so I want you to think about your goal right now and, take a stab at the number of where you think you might lie on this ruler of readiness to change your behavior in the way that you outlined using the SMART goal format. And so let's just say that you picked the number 6. So you're a 6 on a scale of 0 to 10 on how ready you are to make shifts in your behavior. And I want you to consider right now why you might have chose 6 or 3 or 8 or whatever number you chose, why you chose that number instead of a lower number. So why did you choose, let's say, 6 instead of a 2? Or why did you choose 6 instead of 4? And it can be helpful to have a piece of paper and just kind of jot down what comes to mind when you ask yourself that question. How ready are you? And why are you not at a lower level? And then ask yourself the same question in the opposite direction. So if you pick 6, for example, why are you not an 8 or a 9 or a 10 in your feeling of readiness to change your behavior? And maybe jot down what comes to mind when you challenge yourself in that way. And so really what this exercise does is it helps you to kind of dig deep and identify what your unique motivators and barriers are to meeting your goal. So, when I asked you why a 6 and not a 2 or a 3, um, you probably came up with answers or reasons that reflected why you're motivated to make a change in your life. So you've really probably identified some of your major personal and unique motivators to really wanting to make this change. So it's important to identify those and to hold on to those and to reflect on those reasons if you find yourself slipping up. And in the other direction, why not higher? Why not more ready? Those are barriers. Those are identified barriers to why you might be delayed in your goal or why you might struggle along the way. And so this is also really helpful to know because one, it's good to know what might stand in your way and be ready, but also you can kind of do a better job of preparing how you're going to handle those barriers when they come up. So how are you going to overcome, the what stands in your way? And maybe you find that you're actually not, like when you really reflect on that question, you really find that, hey, I'm actually not ready to make this change. This readiness ruler really kind of showed me that I am not quite there yet. And that's great. And then you can, save yourself a lot of time and agony and disappointment and go back to the SMART goal process, and maybe pick something a little bit more realistic for yourself. So this is just kind of a fun exercise that helps you identify your motivators and barriers, which is something really important in kind of determining whether you're going to be successful or not at meeting your goal. And so I also want to just share some tips for success. And so once you've, created a SMART goal and you've identified your motivators, and you've identified your barriers and you reflected on those, some additional tips for success is it can be really helpful to have you really visualize how it's going to feel, what it's going to be like when you have met your goal. So really try to embody like who you're going to be as this person who engages in this new and different behavior. And you can actually even start to act as if you've met that goal. So start to move around the world as if you're, depending on your goals, someone who is not as connected or engaged in social media. Maybe that's your goal, or someone who is more connected with family, if that's your goal, or, generally speaking, and someone who is eating healthier and following the SMART goal outline that they put together for themselves. What's it going to feel like? And how can you start to move through the world as if you're already there? Kind of embodying that success can actually help you get there and help you realize it. Another thing that can be helpful is to try to prepare in advance and tailor your environment to, again, using maybe some of the barriers that you've already identified. How can you change up your environment to make yourself more successful? So one example I like to give is, let's say you're trying to quit smoking and you tend to smoke every day on your drive into work. Well, it's going to be a really challenging environment to be in your car driving into work if that's the environment and the place where you always would engage in maybe the negative behavior you're trying to change. So one thing you can do is you can start to drive a different way to work, take a different route, switch cars with a partner or a friend. So you're riding in a different vehicle, thinking of how you can shift your environment and these cues that maybe go off that are going to kind of stand in your way, are going to pull you into the negative behavior again, or prevent you from reaching your positive behavior. Thinking about how you can switch things up in one way or another. And sometimes you're tailoring your environment isn't always about your physical environment. Sometimes it has to do with the people you surround yourself with. So if your social group is maybe engaged in the behavior or the practice that you're trying to switch, it might be helpful to kind of take a little break or limit your interaction with certain people. This can also be true if your social group just isn't really maybe very supportive of the changes that you're trying to make. So really reflecting on what kind of maybe temporary distance you might need to put between yourself and other people, and and maybe be honest and communicate kind of your needs and why you're making this goal. And also be ready for people not to be supportive of you. Sometimes people have a really challenging reaction to your positive behavior changes. Sometimes people have a really hard time um, when the dynamic shifts and you actually are growing and changing and becoming a better person. That's naturally going to impact your relationships and your dynamic with other people. And that can be hard for people sometimes. So kind of anticipate that, be aware of that. And don't let that be a reason to stop you from being successful at meeting the goals that feel right intrinsically to you and right for you. Kind of just anticipate that and maybe make shifts as needed to make sure that your environment socially and physically is in the best possible place for you to meet your goal. And the last thing I'll say about goal setting, which is probably the most important aspect of being successful in meeting your goals, and that is to practice self-compassion. So, a lot of times this stuff comes across as, warm and fuzzy therapist talk, but for real, it is so strongly associated with success. I have found in my own personal life and in my clients' experiences as well. So what is the energy? What is the energy behind your goal? Are you treating yourself with kindness, or are you shaming yourself around the behavior that you're trying to change? What is the quality of the energy and the intention behind your goal? Is it harsh or is it kind? Is it a heavy energy? It feels like you're kind of walking through mud, or is it light? Is it firm? Is it flexible? And the lighter you can be, the more forgiving you can be, the kinder you can be to yourself throughout the process, the more successful you are going to be. So Carl Rogers, this is a quote, this is my favorite quote from a psychologist, really captures this well. He says, and the curious paradox is that it is only when I accept myself just as I am that I can change. And so often we feel it's the opposite, that we have to be really harsh on ourselves and not allow ourselves to enjoy life and to live fully until we are at a perfect place and where we feel like we want to be or should be. But the truth is you're going to be a lot more successful, and you're going to thrive and grow in a much better way if you can accept who you are exactly as you are right now, flaws and all, before you change or make a goal or, reinvent yourself. Are you striving right now to find a place where you're worthy enough to exist and live? Or are you allowed to be the flawed self that you are and work toward this goal as a flawed human being? We're all flawed human beings. So it's really important to allow yourself to be a little messy, to not get it right. And you think you'll find that you actually come a lot closer to being where you desire and want to be if you're a little easy on yourself, and you're able to kind of roll and be more flexible with the work that you do on trying to become a better person. So that's a good place for us to leave it. I hope that you got some good tools and tips. And if nothing else, this little recap of our Lunch and Learn on goal setting helps you to kind of just reflect on your own life and maybe some of the changes that you'd like to make and some of the ways you'd like to go about doing that. And of course, at KKJ, we are always available to help you, and we can definitely set up sessions that are specific to goal setting and trying to help you set the best possible goals for growth for yourself for 2022. Thanks for listening.